Nathan Hale stood at the counter of Ridgeline Medical Supply, watching the cashier run his card a second time, hoping the machine had simply misread it the first time. Denied. Behind him, in a rented wheelchair 2 sizes too small, his daughter Ava shifted uncomfortably, the way she'd been shifting for 6 months, ever since the accident that took the use of her legs and left her folded into equipment never built for an 8-year-old body still growing. "I'm sorry, sir," the cashier said quietly. "The loan office already flagged the account this morning. I can't override it." Nathan looked at the number on the screen, $4,200. The custom chair, fitted specifically to Ava's frame, the one her physical therapist said she needed within the month or risk permanent damage to her spine. He had $11 in his checking account and a denial letter folded in his jacket pocket from a bank that had looked at his self-employed carpentry income and decided he wasn't worth the risk. "Dad," Ava said softly, "it's okay. The old one's fine." It wasn't fine. He'd watched her wince every time she shifted her weight for 6 straight months, and every night he lay awake doing math that never came out right. If you believe the smallest, quietest kindnesses are usually hiding the biggest stories behind them, stay with me, because this one's going to surprise you more than once. Subscribe now so you don't miss where it goes. Nathan had been raising Ava alone for 3 years, since his wife Renee passed from a sudden illness that took her in less than 4 months. He'd rebuilt his life around one thing since then, making sure Ava never felt the absence of a parent, even on the days he carried both roles badly. He ran a small carpentry business, custom cabinetry and repair work, steady enough most months, unpredictable enough that no bank wanted to lend against it. Ava had adjusted to the accident faster than anyone expected. Children often do. What she hadn't adjusted to was a chair that had been a temporary hospital loaner, never meant to be permanent, cutting into her hips a little more every week. 4 loan applications, 4 denials. Nobody had asked what the loan was actually for. Behind them in line stood a woman in her late 60s, silver hair, a cardigan the color of faded lavender, a small bag of medical tape in her hand. She'd said nothing through the entire exchange, until the cashier turned the counter monitor to update the account, and for half a second, Ava's paperwork sat facing outward. A single line of diagnosis text printed at the top. The woman went very still. Her eyes moved from the screen to Ava, then back to the screen. Something crossed her face that had nothing to do with ordinary sympathy, something closer to being struck. Then, without a word, she turned and walked out of the store. Nathan didn't notice. He was too busy folding the useless denial letter back into his pocket, telling Ava it would be all right, that they'd figure something out. 2 minutes passed. The bell over the door rang again. The same woman walked back in, more composed now, her wallet already open. "Put it on my card," she said quietly to the cashier. Nathan turned. "I'm sorry." "The chair," she said. "Put it on my card." "Ma'am, I can't ask you to. You didn't ask," she said. "I offered." She handed her card over before Nathan could argue further. Ava watched, quiet, wide-eyed, looking between the 2 adults. "I don't even know you," Nathan said. The woman smiled, but something behind it looked heavier than the moment called for. "You don't have to," she said. "You just have to let me do this." She left before he could get her name properly, only catching that it was a leaner, and that she'd walked out the door with a strange, unreadable steadiness, like someone finishing something rather than starting it. Ava got her custom chair 3 days later. It fit her for the first time in 6 months. She rolled circles around their living room, laughing in a way Nathan hadn't heard since before the accident. But Nathan couldn't stop turning the moment over. Not the generosity itself. The look on Alina's face right before she'd walked out that first time. She hadn't looked at Ava the way strangers usually looked at a wheelchair. She'd looked at the paperwork like it had said something specific to her, then left, then come back changed. A theory formed slowly in his mind, the kind you build out of grief and hope at the same time. Renee had grown up 2 towns over, had gone to a small elementary school, had once mentioned, years ago, a teacher who'd meant something to her. Did she know Renee? He found Alina 2 weeks later through a neighbor who recognized the description, a retired elementary teacher, still volunteering Thursdays at the community center. "I wanted to thank you properly," Nathan said, "and I have to ask, did you know my wife, Renee Hale? She grew up near here." Alina looked at him for a long moment, something almost sad passing over her face. "No," she said gently. "I never knew your wife. I'm sorry." Nathan felt the theory collapse, and underneath it, the real question stood back up larger than before. "Then why?" he asked. "Why us?" Alina was quiet for a while. "I owe someone," she finally said. Who, she almost smiled. Someone I never met again. 17 years earlier, Alina had run a small special education classroom on the other side of town. One of her students was a 9-year-old girl named Marisol, born with a condition that left her needing a wheelchair custom-built to her frame. The exact same wording Alina had just read on Ava's paperwork, printed in the exact same clinical shorthand she'd never forgotten. Marisol's family struggled the way Nathan's did, proud, exhausted, one bad month from losing everything. The district had a small equipment assistance fund that year, and Alina filed the paperwork herself, certain it would go through in time. Then the district announced budget cuts. The fund was the first thing eliminated. Alina didn't accept it quietly. She wrote to the school board twice. She sat through a public meeting where she was told, politely, that the decision was final and there was nothing more to discuss. She called the district office 6 times over 3 weeks, and on the 6th call was told there was simply no more money and to please stop calling. She made one last attempt, driving to Marisol's apartment on a Friday evening with a folder of paperwork and a plan to appeal directly to a state assistance office she'd found on her own. She knocked, no answer. A neighbor told her the family had moved out that morning, rent had gone up, and they'd found something cheaper 2 counties over. Alina never got an address. She never learned whether Marisol got a proper chair in time, or whether the delay had done to her spine what delays like that usually do to a growing child's body. She kept the folder for years, unopened, in a drawer she rarely looked in. "I've thought about her every September since," Alina said. "Every time I've seen a wheelchair in a waiting room. When I saw those words on your daughter's screen, I wasn't looking at a stranger's paperwork. I was looking at the exact sentence I've read in my sleep for 17 years. I walked out of that store because I couldn't stand there and just feel it. And then I came back because I couldn't let it happen again, not while I had a way to stop it." "You don't owe us anything," Nathan said quietly. "I know," Alina said. "That's exactly why I could finally give it." Nathan and Ava started visiting most Thursdays, helping Alina sort donated books at the community center. Alina taught Ava to read aloud with real expression, the way she once had with Marisol, and slowly, without either of them naming it, something like family grew in the space where 2 strangers had once stood in a checkout line. Alina never stopped wondering what happened to Marisol. She'd looked on and off over the years, half-heartedly, afraid of what she might find. It was Nathan, 8 months later, who actually found her. A pediatric physical therapy clinic 2 counties over, running a program for children with mobility conditions, founded and directed by a woman in her mid-20s named Marisol Reyes. Nathan brought Alina there on a Thursday afternoon without telling her exactly why. Marisol recognized her the moment she walked through the door. "Mrs. Voss," she said, her voice catching, "you fought for me. I remember you fighting for me even after we left. My mother told me for years someone tried." Alina stood frozen in the doorway. "I never knew if it mattered," she whispered. Marisol gestured around the clinic, at the children in the waiting room, at the row of custom chairs lined up along one wall, each one fitted and paid for through a small assistance fund. The clinic ran quietly for families who couldn't otherwise afford them. "You believed someone would fight for me even when the system wouldn't," Marisol said. "So I decided I'd be the one who fights for kids like me now. Every chair in this room exists because you never stopped trying, even when it didn't work." Alina sat down slowly in one of the waiting room chairs, and for the first time in 17 years, let herself cry over something that had, after all, mattered. A year later, Ava stood in front of her class for a project about someone who inspires her. "Her name is Alina," she read. "She helped my dad when nobody else would. I used to think she just felt sorry for us. But it wasn't that. She was still trying to fix something sad from a long time ago, and because she never gave up even after it seemed too late, a girl she couldn't save became someone who saves kids like me now." She looked up from her paper. "I think that's the bravest kind of kindness, the kind that keeps trying even after it feels like it failed. Some debts take 17 years to find the right door to walk through twice. And sometimes the person who finally answers it isn't the one you helped at all, but the one they went on to help, long after you stopped hoping it mattered." If this one reached you, tell us in the comments about a kindness you never knew the whole story behind. Welcome to Heartverse. We're glad you're here.